Well, good afternoon, fellow constitutionalists, and welcome to the Independence Day special here at the Hemlock Studios here in central Susquehanna Valley in the Great Keystone State. This is the Dan Clements Show. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your constitutional warrior fighting for your right just to be an American. I'm a little flustered here today. I meant to get this out hours and hours ago, but I had a computer crash and lost a bunch of files. I had to get them off my backup, and that's taken forever. And I finally got it going here. And this video, when I put it out, will not have the links to the shows, to my Facebook and all that kind of stuff, because I'm waiting to get that off my other computer. I'll go back and just add them to it after I post it. But I wanted to get this up. This is July 7th, the year of our Lord, 2022. What is it, 246 years? Since 1776 in the writing, or not actually the writing, it was written before, but on July 2nd, they voted to secede or separate from Great Britain, and it was proclaimed on July 4th, and it's become a national holiday on July 4th, but it's not Happy 4th of July, folks. It's Happy Independence Day, and that's something we really, really should remember, or have to remember, or I would like us to remember this. So, 246 years ago, our forefathers read a document that shook the world. I mean, it literally upended the world. We were going against the superpower of the day, the British Empire. At that time, the sun never set on the Union Jack. That was their flag. That was their military, their naval flag. It never sat on the Union Jack. They were all over the world. They had colonies all over the world. And yet this document shook the world, because how dare the 13 colonies go against England, and especially King George. We declared our independence from England. The colonies were living under tyranny at this time, and the colonists thought it was their right to throw off the despotism. Now, I was doing some research. It was in 1761 when the revolution actually started. The war, the firing revolution, where everybody was using guns and stuff like that, had not started yet. But the idea of a revolution was started. Samuel Adams and John Adams and some of those folks from Massachusetts were getting together, and they were, especially John Adams, and he was fighting a good fight from the beginning. He didn't want to separate at first, but he saw that there was no choice, that the colonies needed to declare their independence from the tyranny that was being foisted upon the colonies by England. And I have a dramatic reading. I'm not going to read it. I'll never get through it myself. I have a dramatic reading from the Sons of History on a video here I'm going to show you here in a second. But what I want you to do throughout this week, and maybe the next couple weeks, I urge you to read the Declaration of Independence. If you haven't read it in a long time, I urge you to read it. And especially look at the abuses that were foisted upon the colonies by England, and look to see if that isn't going on today in our pretend, and I say pretend, constitutional republic. And I don't want to get too far back in our history here on January 6th, but the leftists and the Democrats and some establishment Republicans said that this was an insurrection against the duly elected government. Folks, I'm here to tell you that the government we have in Washington, D.C. is not following the Constitution. It is not set up the way it's supposed to. It's not operating the way it's supposed to. We have too much bureaucracy. We have too much usurpation of authority over the states. And the leftists are just going nuts because the Supreme Court is kicking a lot of this stuff back to the states, as it should. It should be in the states. But again, those are some other shows down the line here. We're talking about the Happy Independence Day. Hopefully, we celebrated our Saturday night because my wife had to work today. Barbecue ribs on the smoker grill. And I know a lot of people, I went into town to get some gas before my bonus points on my shopping card went away today. So smelled a lot of steaks and a lot of hot dogs and everything on the grill. So everybody is celebrating Independence Day. A lot of them don't know what they're celebrating for. I encourage them again to read the Declaration of Independence. Go read Frederick Douglass. He was a freed slave, a very intelligent man, and had a lot to say about Independence Day. And I think it would behoove us all to read a lot of that. I do at least once a year read his speeches, Declaration of Independence a couple more times a year. Matter of fact, Lord willing, the creeks don't rise. I'm planning on doing a few episodes on the abuses that were that England was perpetrating on the colonies, and compare them to what abuses are going on today. So hopefully you'll find this dramatic reading entertaining. And again, the links that are normally in my videos will be on later after they've been posted. If I don't get to it before, it's already 6:15 here in Eastern Daylight Time here in the Keystone State. So I don't know how much longer I'm going to work on this tonight, but I'm definitely going to get it up on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, and Facebook. So I'm going to get them up on those 3 platforms. Oh, and Gab. I can put them up on Gab now too. So here is the dramatic reading. Hopefully you'll find this very interesting. I did. And again, the hat tip to Sons of History. This on YouTube, and that link will also be in the folder below, in the links below. Have a happy Independence Day, folks.
In Congress, July 4th, 1776. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has effected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity. which denounces our separation, and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. The foregoing declaration was, by order of Congress, engrossed and signed by the following members: John Hancock. New Hampshire, Josiah Bartlett, William Whipple, Matthew Thornton. Massachusetts Bay, Samuel Adams, John Adams, Robert Treat Payne, Elbridge Gerry. Rhode Island, Stephen Hopkins, William Ellery. Connecticut, Roger Sherman, Samuel Huntington, William Williams, Oliver Wolcott. Delaware, Caesar Rodney, George Reed, Thomas McKean. Maryland, Samuel Chase, William Packer, Thomas Stone, Charles Carroll of Carrollton. Virginia, George Wythe, Richard Henry Lee, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Harrison, Thomas Nelson Jr., Francis Lightfoot Lee, Carter Braxton. New York, William Floyd, Philip Livingston, Francis Lewis, Lewis Morris. New Jersey, Richard Stockton, John Witherspoon, Francis Hopkinson, John Hart, Abraham Clark. Pennsylvania, Robert Morris, Benjamin Rush, Benjamin Franklin, John Morton, George Clymer, James Smith, George Taylor, James Wilson, George Ross. North Carolina, William Hooper, Joseph Hughes, John Penn. South Carolina, Edward Rutledge, Thomas Hayward Jr., Thomas Lynch Jr., Arthur Middleton. Georgia, Button Gwinnett, Lyman Hall, George Walton.